It's amazing how this one trend has held strong oversized silhouettes. This week, we decided we had to add an oversized style to our free pattern collection. Enter this beautiful blouse-free sewing pattern, which can be made with ditzy floral prints in viscose georgette that will work beautifully with this blouse pattern. This pattern features Raglan sleeves, a style adopted from classic sportswear, injecting a relaxed vibe into the oversized blouse. Isn't it wonderful when a sewing project blends with comfort and style, crafting a one-of-a-kind fashion statement that's effortless yet elegant? How to sew the facing and button placket. Step 1. Pin and sew down the V of the neck slit, facing onto the button placket slit on the center line of the front bodice, right sides together. Make sure the top edges of both the facing and shirt front are matching. Step 2. Cut a straight line down the middle of the slit. Trim the seam allowance and clip into the fabric at the deep V. Step 3. Flip the facing towards the inside of the garment and press firmly with the iron. Step 4. For the button placket facing, we recommend cutting out a piece of interfacing half the width of the pattern and press it to the wrong sides of the fabric. Step 5. Finish the edges of the button placket facing. I used a zigzag stitch. Step 6. When making the loopholes, cut out a rectangular shape 2 inches in length and 20 inches in width. Fold this right sides together and sew 3/8 of an inch from the fold. Trim the seam allowance and use a loop turner to bring the strip right side out. Step 7. Cut out 10 strips each 2 inches long and sew onto the placket 1 inch apart to align with the buttons. Note: the buttons used for this project were 16 large or 10 millimeters. If your buttons vary in size, you may need to adjust the length that you cut the strips. Also, if you'd prefer fewer buttons, plan the spacing accordingly. Step 8. Sew the end of the loops 1/2 inch from the folded side. Then sew the placket with loops to the front facing, leaving a 1/4 inch peeking out of the wearer's side. Step 9. Mark the placement of the buttons onto the other side and sew the buttons down to meet precisely. How to sew the top. Step 1. Using a 1/4 inch French seams, sew together the front bodice with the back bodice at the side seams. Step 2. Sew together the inner seams for both the sleeves, using a 1/4 inch French seams. Step 3. Sew the sleeves to the top, using a 1/4 inch French seams. Because these are Raglan sleeves, you'll only sew the U shape of the arm sky. This shirt does not have shoulder seams. How to add the neckline. Ruffles and drawstring. Step 1. Fold the neckline frill lengthwise, right sides together, and sew the short ends together with a 1/2 inch seam allowance. Clip the corner, trim the seam allowance, and turn it right side out. Press. Step 2. Pin the neckline frill onto the neckline, placing the right sides together, matching the raw edges, and sewing 1/2 inch all the way across the neckline. Step 3. Make a binding strip out of the neckline casing. To do this, fold and press the long edges of the neckline casing. Fold the short edges down a 1/4 inch and sew to prevent fraying. Step 4. Sew the neckline casing along the inside of the neckline, using 2 rows of stitching along the folded edges of the strip. Step 5. To make a drawstring for the adjustable neckline, sew the 2 strips together along one of the short edges, right sides facing. Trim the seam allowance and press open. Step 6. Fold the strip lengthwise, right sides together. Sew 1/2 inch from the fold and cut the excess from the seam. Step 7. Use a loop turner to flip this strip outward. Finish the edges of the drawstring. Step 8. Use a small safety pin to get the string all the way through the casing of the neckline. How to add the sleeve cuff ruffles. Step 1. Sew the 2 ends of a sleeve ruffle right sides together with a 1/2 inch seam allowance to create a loop. Press in half lengthwise, wrong sides together. Step 2. Unfold the ruffle and right sides together. Align one of the raw edges with the sleeves. Be sure to match the seams. Sew together with a 1/2 inch seam allowance. Repeat on the other side. Step 3. Press the seam allowance towards the ruffle, then refold the cuff. Press the cuff's remaining seam allowance down so it sits just beyond the seam you just stitched. Stitch in the ditch, then repeat on the other side. Step 4. Measure the circumference of your wrist. Subtract about 1 inch from the length and cut 2 strips of elastic to that length. Step 5. gather the sleeve cuffs. To do this, base stitch 2 parallel lines across the wrist on the sleeve, not the ruffle. Step 6. Pull the tail threads and gather until you've got double the circumference of your wrist measurement. Step 7. Sew the elastic with a zigzag or stretch stitch between the 2 rows of gathered stitches. Finishing the bottom hem. For the hem at the bottom, fold over the raw edge 1/4 inch twice and sew across the edge to complete this garment. Download the free PDF pattern in the description below. And since you've made it this far and you're not already subscribed to my channel, be sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the bell notification so you don't miss when I post my next video, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks so much for watching. Follow your joy.